These are 10 most unbelievable true crime stories ever shared on Joe Rogan Podcast. In JRE number 1947, Chris DeStefano tells Joe Rogan how his mom's friend unknowingly went on a date with Ted Bundy before the world knew he was a monster.
That's sick. That's my favorite follow. That's Stoic Instagram.
Oh, Stoic is great.
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday's great, too.
Oh, yeah, Ryan Holiday, yeah. He looks like the guy that killed 4 college students in Idaho.
He does.
That's who I thought it was. I was like, oh, the Stoic is a mass murderer.
He's out. He's out. He's writing books about just being cool about everything. But
did you hear that, by the way, with Idaho? They're thinking about bringing back the firing squad if he gets convicted.
Oh, my God. Well, they think he might have killed people in Washington State, too. Is that where it was? It was somewhere else. There was another place where he lived where similar crime took place, and they think he was studying crime in college in order to get better at it.
Right.
It's really evil. It's an evil, scary story.
Yeah.
If all this they're accusing him is accurate, it's horrific that guy was out there.
Right. Dude, you want to hear a wild story? So my mom had a friend.
Let's see if we can find out if that's true, though.
Yeah.
Which part?
The part where they think that he might have committed a similar crime. Excuse me, somewhere else.
Here we go. See, this is what's happening now on an intermittent fasting stomach. I'm going to start getting crazy. It's going to, it might get bad in
Want to
here.
take another sniff?
Why the hell not?
All right, here we go. Ready?
Oh, that was deep.
Oh.
Joey went in.
I went in. Okay. Get in there, Chrissy. Woo, Jamie. No, Jamie said no. I didn't even get his full name out before no was coming out of his mouth.
Jamie, that one burned. That one fogged up my glasses. That one burned, baby.
I get it, dude. I want to lift right now. I want to do some deadlifts.
I seriously like, yeah, like I want to fucking, I want to, yeah.
Put the lid on it.
I want to like start doing jujitsu with you. I don't even know how to do it.
There's nothing like a freshie when you open them up fresh.
That is a freshie.
Yeah, when you let them sit for a while, they lose a lot of their potency. Like we had one that was here for a few months and it had lost a lot of kick. But damn, when you open them fresh.
I don't see anything about other crimes. I'm looking still.
I believe it was where he was originally going to school.
Yeah, it said he was Washington State.
Yeah, but just did you Google may have possibly committed similar crime in Washington State?
Washington crimes.
Okay.
Just Google may have possibly committed, wanted for possibly committing similar crime.
A lot of serial killers come from this part of the country.
He could be major link to other murders. This is it. And this is in Newsweek.
Okay.
I don't know. So.
Oh, it says new evidence recovered may be a major link to the Idaho murders. He's been accused of fatally stabbing University of Idaho students. The search warrant, which was reported by the New York Times, discussed several items which were taken from his residence. Where is the thing about the other cases? Oh, here it is.
Attending another place. But.
And December 30th, he was arrested at his parents' residence in Pennsylvania. Extradited to Idaho, where he's currently charged. Koberger was attending Washington State University at the time of the murders.
Yeah, he looks like the guy from the Stoic.
But there was he does looks a lot like him. But Ryan Holiday's quite a bit more handsome.
Ryan Holiday's
his older, like meaner brother.
Ryan Holiday, hottie with a body.
But
it says Pennsylvania was sifting through cold cases for links to him.
Oh, it was Pennsylvania?
That's where he was found.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where. Yeah, they pulled him over, and it was in his parents' house. And because remember, the media was saying we don't have any leads, but the FBI was following him across the country.
Yeah, they can't just leak.
Yeah, you can't do that
information. They're in the middle of an investigation of a fucking psycho.
But it is wild, like with these. He's famous now for these murders, but as you said, could be stuff before. My mom had a friend, right? Grew up in Utah. Maybe she's 18, 19 years old, whatever year, 70s, 80s, whatever. Goes on a date with a guy, right? Normal date, just met him, I think at the supermarket. Goes on a date with this guy, and she's at the table with him, and she feels very like a ominous feeling looking at this man. She's like, I'm looking at him, and I can see like there's nothing behind his eyes. Like there's just something that I don't like about this guy. So to the point where she has never done this, she was only 18, but since this has never done this, she went to a payphone at the restaurant, called her brother, and was like, can you please come pick me up like immediately? And stayed in the bathroom until her brother was outside and went in the car and left. And she was like, I'm just creeped out by this guy. I can't explain it. I'm creeped out. All this energy. I'm creeped out. Now, this man had picked her up from her house. So the brother had a paper route. He's leaving the next morning at 5 a.m., sees some ruffling in the bushes. Okay? Crazy, right? Like whatever. Sees a guy running out of the bushes, says, holy shit, whatever, runs back in the house, tells his mom and dad, sister wakes up, says he was wearing like a beige jacket. She's like, that's the guy I was on a date with. Like that, he was like waiting. He must have been like waiting for me, right? Whatever. Goes on, life goes on. What a psycho, lunatic boyfriend. 3 years later, Ted Bundy on the news. She was on a date with Ted Bundy before he had committed any murders, or he had committed murders but had not been famous for it yet, had not been convicted of it yet. She said when he saw him, she literally almost fell out of her chair because she was like, that look. She said that Ted Bundy, about, how everyone says he's so handsome, whatever, she said he would get a look over him when he was preying on a victim, which felt she was being preyed on, that she doesn't even look. He's like, he does not look like that. His face configures and contorts to something that looks so sinister that she literally was like, get me away from him now. So I was like, whoa, fucking Teddy B. Imagine you on a date with a young Teddy B. That'd be fucking nuts, dude.
So he had already committed murders. So he was looking to murder her, and he was giving that energy out.
She said, based off when all his crimes were exposed, from what the FBI said, when she went on a date with him, let's say it was 1978, he had already been convicted, connected to murders in other parts of that. Because his first murders were in like the Utah region, and that's where they were.
Holy shit.
Wild, right?
Holy shit.
Dude. Fucking, it's pretty nuts. And then I think I might have said this on the last one, but T.T. Jerry, when she was in prison, served prison time with the son of Sam. She shared a wall with the son of Sam. 2 murderers. She shared a wall with the son of Sam and Ronald DeFeo from the Amityville Horror House, the man who killed all those people in the movie The Amityville Horror, who was really based off Ronald DeFeo. She was in prison with both of them at the same time, and the prisoners from Escape from Dannemora, who like that Showtime show that they made. So she was in like real deal prisoners. But she said the son of Sam. Now this was months before the Netflix documentary came out. T.T. Jerry said, she's like, the son of Sam, David, did not kill all those people. He was involved in a cult. There were other murderers, but the city pinned it all on him. And then a few months later, this Netflix documentary came out a couple of years ago, basically saying that most likely Son of Sam did not kill all those people. He killed maybe 1 or 2, but there was other murderers that just got away with it.
Do you know the Henry Lee Lucas story?
Henry Lee Lucas. Well,
Henry Lee Lucas, they made a film about him called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Okay.
And it's a guy who got arrested for 62 murders. And he was basically a drifter, and he was traveling across the country murdering people.
Okay.
But they think that what really happened was they came up to him and they said, hey, Henry, there was a few people that were killed behind the bushes in Indianapolis in 76. We'd sure love to solve that crime. Was that you? Yep, that's me. I killed them too. Well, did you do it with a knife? Because we found a knife. Yep, knife. Killed him with a knife.
Yeah.
And this guy was basically a dullard and may have killed people. Like a lot of drifters have killed people. But it seems like, Google that. Make sure I'm correct on this. I think now they think that they attributed a bunch of crimes to him that he couldn't possibly have committed.
It's a wild thing.
The depraved serial killer who confessed to hundreds of murders. See, this is it. So it was more than 62, which is what he was. I think he was originally charged with 600 people. Okay. Drawn together by shared childhood trauma, Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole became lovers, then serial killers who terrorized America in the 1970s. So but he confessed to hundreds of murders, but they think that some of them he couldn't possibly have done.
But did he stay in prison for the rest of his life because of it?
Yeah, I think they might have killed him
in prison.
I don't know what happened. I don't know if he's still alive. But see if he got if that's a story that they got him to confess to a bunch of murders that he couldn't have actually done.
That's a common thing, though, right? People confess to stuff all the time. There's a show on Apple TV. It was called Blackbird. It just came out last year. It's about a real story about a guy who, what his tactic would be, is he murdered a lot of people, but he would say to the police, "Oh, I murdered that girl in that county. I'm confessing to it." But then they would go through the research and be like, no, you couldn't have possibly. But he would cop to it. And then the cops would be like, he did that like 5 times. And they'd be like, every county he was investigating, they'd be like, that's what he does. He confesses to murders. He's a bullshitter. But he really was killing people. He was confessing to false ones so he could get away with the real ones.
Holy shit.
Wild, right?
Holy shit.
So it's like some of these guys are so smart.
It's a cool
Dude, the show Black.
Holy
This actor, I think is William Hauser. Something.
good.
This is one of the best actors in my generation. No, Joe, I don't know if you know this guy. This guy's acting is like Daniel Day-Lewis level. He is a phenomenal actor. When you watch the show Blackbird, you cannot believe it. Where I'm like,
and this is on Apple Plus?
Apple TV. This is one of the best shows I've seen.
Wow.
Came out last summer.
No shit.
This kid is literally like phenomenal. And then I'm watching 101 Dalmatians a day later with my kids, and he's in that. I'm like, look at this fucking lunatic.
He plays Richard Jewell in
Yes.
the Richard Jewell movie about the Olympic Park bombing.
Yep.
Wow.
Unbelievable actor. He was also in that sketch show, I Think You Should Leave on Netflix, which is one of the funniest sketch shows I've ever seen in my life. He's got great sketches in that. That guy, but that show, Blackbird, was it's unbelievable. So basically what happens is this guy who's from he's from a bunch of movies. This kid is ripped, by the way. This kid has to be intermittent fasting.
He's in not the Watchmen.
Samuel L. Jackson's in it. Yeah. It's a famous movie, and he's excellent in it. But basically, the premise of it's based on a true story. This guy, the hottie with the body, he gets convicted 10 years in prison for gun charges. I think he's a guy out of Massachusetts. So, and he was a good con man, right? This is all real. Good con man, could gift a gab, whatever. So the FBI wants to pin the guy with the mutton chops, Hauser. They want to pin, Larry Hall is his name in real life. They want to pin murders on him. They know that they've kind of caught up to his game now. They know that he lies about murders here to commit murders here. They know it, but they got to convict. They got to get him to confess to one of these murders because they found the girl's body because he was killing kids, like 14-year-old girls, like brutal shit, raping them, horrific. So they say to this kid, to the jacked guy, they say, look, you got the gift of gab. You got 10 years in federal prison, okay? You're 3 months into your sentence. We're going to transfer you to this maximum security prison where Larry Hall is. If you can get him to confess to the murder of this girl that we have evidence on, and you can get that, your sentence is commuted immediately and you're out of prison. That's all you got to do. But he was in a minimum security prison, so he would be able to either coast through 10 years or take a chance and go to the prison with murderers, rapists, and potentially be murdered in the shower stall. But if he can get this guy gift of gab and get him to confess, then he'll get out.
Holy shit.
And that's what the show's about. And it was, dude, amazing show. Like, edge of my seat. It was one of the best shows I've seen in a long time.
That's
I want to watch it. I want to watch it again on smelling salts.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm fucking pumped about that. I've been looking for a new show.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, let me just finish the thought about Jerry. What I want to say is the Son of Sam thing. He said, he was a serial killer, yes, and don't get me wrong, murderer, deserves to be in prison. He said the biggest fucking lunatic. Like, he was like the only person who I met. I was like, this guy needs to be like either put to death or kept like in a cage, like under the jail. He said was Ronald DeFeo, who the Amityville Horror House guy, because he said he would cook for him all the time, Ronald DeFeo, and he would like let Ronald DeFeo like jerk off to him. They would put like a prison mirror, and he would like, because he was trans, Jerry, so he would shake his ass a little bit and let Ronald like get his rocks off, whatever. He didn't care. He said, but every morning he would make Ronald DeFeo Jr. like a little breakfast and his little, they had like little hot stoves in there. They would let prisoners like Jerry, after you did enough time, give you some stuff. He'd make a little bacon and stuff for him. And he said every morning, like clockwork, 7 days a week, every morning, bring Ronald his food and say, how was your night, Ronald? How you feeling? He was like, good. I feel good. I didn't kill my grandma. It's the only thing. I killed everyone in that house, but I did not get my grandma. So, but everything else, other than that, it's good. And Jerry'd be like, okay. And then keep moving. So he's like, still, he's in prison and that is true. The only one he didn't kill in that house, the grandma either got out or wasn't there, but he was like, there's no rehabilitation for that man. He genuinely believes if he does not kill he would say to him, if I don't kill my grandma, I'm not getting into heaven. So he had it warped. He killed his entire family. And he's like, that's how I get to heaven. But I got to get the grandma. And then he died in prison recently. But I was like, whoa, shit. I know, it's wild.
JRE number 1943. Joel Turner describes aiming a shot just inches from a little girl's head to stop a knife-wielding attacker.
When it comes down to like life or death stuff, that's where, you're a very determined person, just in the way that you live your life. It's Cam, very determined person, right? So that's how you get to where you get to. It's the first ingredient in this whole control factor is having enough determination to do that. And like you have a why. You have a why as to why you're doing this. My why was I was scared to death, man, in the sniper world. I was like, man, I hope it doesn't go bad. And I'm like, that can't be the mindset.
Right,
Holy
can't be
mackerel.
the mindset.
But it is the mindset of most cops because they don't have a why. If a cop's never been in a gunfight or a shooting, their why is artificial, right? And it's scary the first time that you do that. Having that why and seeing, like, I was in an HR where I, had to use lethal force on a person that was, I had to put a round this far from another human being's face, right? And that's my why. So when I do training on the team, it's like, you guys don't understand when you're looking through your optic at a reticle and there's somebody's face on the edge of their face is fully in your scope and the reticle's right on the edge, right? And you have to put the round past their head. That's your why, right? So that's your why for all this tactical training that you do. But if you've never been there and done that, you have to learn how to manufacture determination, right? Can you imagine what failure would be in that situation?
Well, tell the story, if you don't mind, the story you told me about the guy who was methed out.
Yeah, so got a SWAT call out of a hostage rescue. There's an unarmed, barricaded subject with a hostage. And you never know. That's all the information you get on the call out, right? So we go there. I get there, and it was weird because on the brief, I walked up to the house, and the SWAT commander briefed me at the head of the garage there, and it was light-colored concrete. It's dark. We didn't have a bunch of lights on because the operation is active in that house right there, but the room was in kind of the back of the house. And I remember he's talking to me, telling me the situation, and I'm looking on the ground, and I'm like, what is all that stuff on the ground, right? And I'm looking at these dark patches on the ground. So I turn my flashlight on, and it's blood. There's blood all over the place on the walkway down from the garage. And I'm like, what is up with that? And he's like, well, this guy stabbed his cousin and then took his own daughter hostage, used her as a human shield with a knife to her. So that's how SWAT got called and all this stuff. So I get there, and I'm up on a ladder over a wood fence, and I'm only like 15 yards from the window, but we can't see anything in the window. And the negotiator's on the phone with this guy, and he's not really making a lot of sense. He wants to talk to his girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. He's got his daughter in there with him, and we can hear her through the wall, right? We can hear her. Sometimes she's screaming, sometimes she's crying, sometimes she's laughing. So we don't know what is going on in there, right? And this goes on for, the negotiators are on the phone with him for a while. And then finally the decision's made, like, we have to get in there because it's starting to go south in negotiations. And we lost comms with the guy.
So
and
you're worried he's going to stab his daughter?
Yeah. Well, he's already done that to his cousin, right? Stabbed him in the face and the legs and the arms, big K-bar knife. It was not a good situation. So, yeah, and he's already used her as a human shield, right? When the cops, what happened is there was a big fight went on. The cops got in, got everybody out. Then they realized the daughter was hiding behind a couch. So they go back in, they restack up, they go back in. Now he's got the daughter around the waist, using her as a human shield, knife to her, and he kicks the door shut on a bedroom. That's what starts the SWAT call out. So I'm looking in this window. It's got blinds on it. Negotiations are going south. We lose comms with the guy. So finally, we're like, we got to get comms with this dude. So we're going to put a throw phone in. So we put a throw phone. A throw phone's like a box. Got a phone in it so the negotiators can talk to the dude. And so we put that in there. My buddy rips the blinds out. When we rip the blinds out, there's the dude again. I can't see him because I can only see like half the room. And he's in the right corner of the room, and I'm over this fence. And the window guys are yelling at him to drop the girl, drop the knife, they get him all the commands, and he's kind of working his way along the wall. He's got her around the waist, so he would hold her up above, So They can't get a shot. And so he's moving his way across the wall, and then he moves his way across this wall and ends up in this corner. Sits down and pulls her up over the top of him. And so the window's on the same wall as this corner, and I can't see any of this stuff. I'm the sniper team leader, so I work my way around, and I get to this gate. I'm like, they called fire priority to the window team. I'm like, I'm on the wrong team, right? So, because there's like 6 dudes at the window, and nobody's shooting. I'm like, why in the F are these guys not shooting? Because I couldn't see what they saw, but that's what's going through my head. So I get off the ladder, I run to this gate, and it's weird, the stuff you remember. They had this, it was like one of those latch type of locks, and it had a bolt through it with the nut all the way buried, and this bolt was like, it felt like it was this long, right? So I'm having to unscrew this freaking bolt, right? I'm screwing, it's the finest threads I've ever felt, right? So I'm unscrewing this bolt. Finally, bing, I get that. I go through the gate, I come around, I come up to the window, and there was another officer that had his face planted against the window so that he could just barely see through this sliver because it was on the same wall. And and he wasn't shooting, and I'm like, why are you not shooting? And so we actually end up having to remove him off the ladder because I don't know what he was thinking. He wasn't hearing us. We were giving him commands to get off the ladder so I could get up there and evaluate the situation. And I'm shooting my sniper rifle was it was a gas-operated 308, and lowest power on the scope was 4.5. And I told the admin years ago, I'm like, I need lower power because it's going to be close probably when it does happen, and sure enough, it was. So I get up on this ladder and I put my face against the wall, and I can just see through the sliver. I can see him sitting, and I can see her sitting in his lap basically, and he's got his arm around her. And so, the team keeps giving him commands, and I'm looking at this shot, and I'm evaluating what's going on, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to shoot him left-handed. And I'm thinking lowest power is 4.5. So I do an optic check on the wall. I'm like, that ain't going to work. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to shoot him with my pistol.
When you say optic check, it's because it's moving too much?
No,
because
because
too much magnification?
too much magnification. So there was a picture, something on the wall. So I brought my rifle up and looked at it. I'm like, that ain't going to work. It was just blurry. It's 4.5 power. The shot's only 11 feet, like 12 feet, 11 feet. God. So I'm like, I don't have the right tool. So I'm thinking, I'm going to have to shoot my handgun. And then I'm thinking, I always preach, handguns suck for killing stuff, right? So that's why I always tell my guys, handguns suck for killing stuff. We don't use handguns if we don't have to. But I'm thinking, I got the wrong tool. What am I going to do? So I'm thinking, wait a minute, stupid. There's 6 guys standing at the window that have the right tool, right? Because they all have their assault rifles. And so the first guy, and it just happened to be the guy that we pulled off the ladder, I'm like, give me your rifle. He's like, what? I go, give me your rifle. So we swap rifles, and he says HK 416. And the reason that he said that was because on an HK 416, if you flip the safety twice, you go to full auto, right? So don't want to do that in a precision environment, right? So I'm like, roger that. And so I got up, and the window's broken at this point. So when you step up to the window, you're literally walking on broken glass. Okay, so I step up, pop, 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 pop. The glass all pops underneath my feet. And I push the rifle. I got to shoot left-handed, right? So I push the rifle in, and I come around the corner. Now the rifle butt is in my bicep with somebody else's rifle, right? But I know this rifle is zeroed because it has to be zeroed, because to get through my qualification a month earlier, it had to be zeroed, right? So I knew that things were good. But I also knew that you got to aim 2.5 inches higher than where you want to hit, because that's a mechanical offset, right? Difference between bore height and sight height, 2.5 inches. So I push the rifle in the window, and I come around the corner, and I look, and the little girl's looking right at me, right? Because all the broken glass. So she's looking right at me, and I bring the reticle up, and it's full pop brightness, right? I can't see anything because he had it set for a white light shot. So when you turn your super bright flashlight on your rifle, it will blare out your reticle. So you got to have your reticle turned way up. Well, he had it set for a white light shot, but I wasn't going to do a white light shot. So I looked at him like, oh no. So just like you're thinking your thing didn't turn on when you're looking at this nil guy, I'm looking at this red sun in a dimly lit room, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. So I pulled the rifle back out of the window, and now I got to work on the buttons on this sight. Well, this isn't my rifle, right? So now I got to find the button that dims the red dot. So I'm messing around with this thing, and the whole team is outside, and they're watching this, right? Because they're going to go on my shot. Now, this dude had the door barricaded with a TV and a TV stand, all that stuff. So they were going to have to hit the door hard, but they were going to get a running start at it. But I moved them out because they were right on the other side of the door, but I didn't know if my round was going to go through the wall or not. So I moved them out. So we got them out. So they're all watching this shit show, basically, of me on this optic. And they're thinking, what are you doing, Turner, right? And I'm thinking, I'm like, I just got to get this thing turned down, right? So I'm messing with the buttons, and I finally get to the right one. So I'm like, okay, good. So I go back up to the window, glass breaks again, pop, pop, pop underneath my feet. I come around the corner.
Does this guy know you're there?
I don't know, because he was, who knows what kind of mental state he was in. And I was trying not to be that's why I didn't turn on any lights or anything. So I come around the corner again, and I look in there. I'm like, okay, I got the right brightness, but it's too close, right? Like her head was like an inch, because what I'm looking at is this. So like this is the back of her head. I'm looking at his eyeball.
Oh, wow.
So I got like an inch. I'm like, nah, it's too close. And remember that this was in December. A year earlier, it was 364 days after I made that decision in that tree stand when I mapped things, right? So now between December of 14 and December of 15, now I have control of what's going on. And I made that vow, right, long ago that I'm not going to shoot an uncontrolled shot. So I come around the corner, and I'm looking, and she's, of course, looking at me, and it's close. I'm like, nah, I ain't going to do that. So I'm waiting. And then he moves his head back, right? I'm like, okay, 2.5 inches of mechanical offset, but his face is all covered in hair, like this giant mop of hair. So I couldn't see the geography of his face at all. Like I want to put it in his eyeball, but I can't see it, right? So I'm just going by the curvature of his forehead. I know I got to aim 2.5 inches over that. So I put it up there, safety's off. Fingers on the trigger, and it's a 2-stage trigger, so I took the first stage out. Here I go. I remember saying that. And then when I'm working on rifle stuff, it's kind of an audible exhale. So right. So that's my concentration guidance. So I put it 2.5 inches over where I wanted to hit. Safety's off. Takes the stage out of the trigger. Here I go. And he moves his head back. Right. Bunk, and he pops it back against the back of her head. And it's funny, the stuff you remember, because I remember his hair swishing, right? And now he's back, and it's too close again. So I'm waiting. He moves his head back again. So he moves his head back again. Now I've got better, it's faster for me to aim where I need to aim. So I put it where I need to. Stages out. Here I go. And the shot broke, and the rest is history. So but
worst case scenario in terms of tension, in terms of consequences.
Right.
Methed up guy,
right.
Knife to this girl.
Right. It's just that was the culmination of everything. That was the start of Shot IQ. Because now I'm like, this is no bullshit, right? This is how to concentrate in high stress events, right? So, and it was cool because I had lots of high-level military operators that I was able to bounce ideas off of. Like, because I'm not getting in gunfights every day. So I go, hey, man, is this real or is this not real? They're like, yeah, how'd you figure that out? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a dumb cop, man. Just thinking, And so I was able to bounce things off of people that had been there and done that. And that's, when you're looking for solving a problem, you have to find those people that have solved it before. But it's so rare to find somebody that solved it before and blueprinted how they did it. That's what's rare in the instruction and just in life in general. There's lots of mentors out there that have been there and done that in whatever field you're looking for. But did they blueprint?
Episode number 2295. Scott Payne relives the night a 1% biker gang took him to a basement, pulled a gun, and demanded he strip to prove he wasn't a Fed.
There was going to be a drug shipment coming in, and my crew was going to be delivering it to another crew, and we needed protection. And we did it in Brockton. and several outlaws hopped in on it. The issue was this, at least one of the big issues. Pretty much that case, I had a great time. Yes, it's violent, and my mentality was changing. There is a podcast that's it's a series that's going to be coming out with the book, and they actually interview one of the task force officers who was over me on that case on the outlaws. And I remember him calling me. He's like, "Hey, what can I say?" I said, "Tell him the truth." I said, I want to know what you were thinking. I know what I was thinking." And it was really, really surreal to hear him talking about he could see my personality changing. He could see, and like the FBI office might be saying, we want him to patch. And he was over here fighting, going, hell no, we're getting everything we need now. If he patches, then they can order him to do shit. And it was just really cool to hear that. But essentially for the case, it was me, an FBI case agent, and 2 task force officers. We had Detective Joe Cummins from Brockton PD, Sergeant Higginbottom from the Massachusetts State Troopers, and then an agent with the FBI. And that was it. I mean, they would add some here and there, but for 2 years, that was it. It was us. So now we get to this point to where we're like, man, let's do this drug protection. And the assistant United States attorney was like, hey, if you're going to be at the clubhouse, or do they talk about this at the clubhouse? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, well, that would be awesome if we could get that recorded, because it helps, right, to show what they're planning on doing. So the night before the deal's supposed to happen, they don't know it, but we've got 40 kilos of real cocaine and 1,000 pounds of weed, real. So you can imagine SWAT teams are involved, because can you imagine if the FBI lost 40 kilos of cocaine and Brockton and Taunton's are all wide awake for the next week, you know, or there's ODs, you know, because that's a liability. Did you say you had 40 kilos? There's only 39 here. I don't know. No, I'm just messing with you. But, so they say, hey, Joe Doggs calls me. It's night at church. He says, hey, I need you to come to the clubhouse. I'm like, all right, cool. And, of course, I'm thinking, I'm type A. I'm Scott Payne. I got this. Let's go do this, man. These are my boys. I've been doing this a year and a half. And I went into the clubhouse, and what I couldn't see, and I won't say where the recording devices were at because that's tradecraft, but let's just say I had a video and recording device hidden somewhere in my clothing. I had a completely audio recording device somewhere else on me, and I had a transmitter, batteries, so the team could listen in. And I went into the clubhouse like normal, but what you can't see, if you go back and you watch the video, is if I'm facing this way and I'm shooting the shit with you and this is the bar, and you're laughing at my jokes like always, when I would turn my head to look this way, it's still filming. And I didn't see it because I turned my head. They go stone face. And I missed it. I didn't see it. I do know that when I got to the clubhouse, I knock on the door. I'm knocking on the door. I'm like, what the Joe Doggs props me. He goes, hey, we're not ready yet. And I'll go, why the hell did you tell me to come? I was being a smart. I'm like, what's the deal? Why would you say come if you're not ready? I didn't pick anything up. So I go in, and for the listeners that may not know, at least in this clubhouse, if you're not a patch member, which I wasn't, they offered it several times. They wanted me to patch. But I'm with what I said for the task force officer. I said the same thing. I'm like, look, if I'm a probate and they say, get your shit text, we're going to go jack this dude, I kind of got to go. I mean, if I don't do it, I'm either getting kicked out or beat down or whatever.
Right.
But being a high-ranking member of an international theft ring that they're making money off of, it's a little different. We were getting everything we wanted. So I go in the clubhouse. I missed that. I also missed that in the back, one of them, Chocolate Scott, it looks like he's dancing to the song that's playing, but he's warming up, and I missed that. And then my second closest contact, Clothesline, says, hey, Tex, you got a minute? And I said, yeah. And we walk. I'd been in that clubhouse, I don't know how many times, Joe, but there's one door I'd never been in, and that's the door we went in. And it was a very tight stairwell into, you can say a basement, but that's being very, I'm stretching it, because I could probably touch the wall on both sides and I couldn't stand up straight. So they bring me down in there. They've brandished their weapons. One of them walks in behind me. He's on the steps. So they got their pistols. And my friend says, hey, there's a lot of shit going on. It's my job to take care of my brothers. I need you to write down your full name, your address, your phone number, all kinds of stuff. And I need you to take off all your clothes. I need to check you for a wire. Whoa. Here's the problem. Had I not been wired, embarrassing, yes. Naked with a bunch of men around you in a cold basement. Yeah, that would have been bad, but it would have been no threat. But I was wired to the hilt. And so you think, man, do you fight? Do you try to get out? Well, there's already 2 or 3 there. I'm probably going to do some Tommy Boy shit and knock myself out on the joist as soon as I start trying to fight. And then upstairs, there's 10 more outlaws. And that door, what I was getting to earlier, I didn't say, if you're not a patch member, you can't touch the door. That door has more than one deadbolt on it. They had welded metal hooks to the frame and put one of those like shipyard metal bars across. So from a breacher's standpoint, it's a fortified door. It might be easier to breach the wall next to it. So we're down there in the basement. And when I go to write my name down, I forgot my middle name. And that's because I was having an oh crap moment. I had an adrenaline dump. Same thing as cops in shootouts, military in shootouts, somebody in a car wreck, first time, everything. When you're having that adrenaline dump, everything slows down. You get auditory exclusion. So everything you're hearing sounds like you're underwater. It's going whoosh, whoosh. It's slow, like you're talking to me like this. Time dilation. Your eyes are clicking. You look and everything's in frames. Everything's slowing down. Your hamstrings get really rubbery. You feel your heart beating. You feel everything pulsing. And what seems like 10, 15 minutes is probably 30 seconds. And that happens. That's an adrenaline dump. So that was happening. And I forgot my middle name. And I'm going, Scott Calloway, Scott Calloway, Scott Calloway. I start going through this damn Rolodex in my head, and I'm going, Scott Calloway, Scott Calloway. And I'm going, Scott Joseph. I go, no, damn it. That was my middle name for another alias, you know. And I don't realize that I do a distraction technique or something to try to get more intelligence. I would have never known I said it, would have never agreed I said it had I not seen it in the recording. But I turn and I go, and what else do you need? And by the way, you've got a bass line of me now, my voice. It did not sound like this on that recording. My throat was tight. The octaves, it was very higher than normal. And I'm like not even enunciating that well. I'm like, and what else do you need? And they're like, what? I go, my name and what else? Well, now I hear them scream up and they go, what else do you need for that website? So now I know, they're going to Google me. Back then there was who'sarat.com, things like that. So I'm gathering that evidence or intelligence. And then I remember my middle name was, my initials were SAC because I'm an idiot and I thought it was funny because SAC is the head of an FBI division and I knew I was never going to be one. So, so I made my initials SAC. So I remember my name's Scott Andrew Calloway. And then I write that down. Well, now I take off all my clothes. I take off my outer clothing, all my shirts. I take my boots off, and I basically pull my underwear and jeans down around my ankles. So pretty much naked from ankles. I'm definitely naked from ankles up. And he starts searching me. And I'm having an oh shit moment. And he's trying to talk to me. And like we had known each other for a year and a half. So I'm not saying it out loud, but if you saw what my face was saying, what my face is saying and asking is, tell me I'm okay. Is this okay? Well, clothesline, because we were tight, hits me back with a face look that's like everything's all right. This is just procedure. However, he didn't know that I'm an undercover agent and I'm wired. So that adds a whole other issue. So he searches me. I think we're done. He even tells me, he says, trust me. If somebody accused me of being a Fed, I'd probably smash them in the fucking mouth. And I said, those are his words. And I immediately said, well, I'm not happy. I'll tell you what I did do. I did look to make sure there was no plastic on the floor. And I've had people ask me, what does that mean? And I go, well, listen, if you're in the criminal underbelly of society and there's plastic on the floor and they're telling you to walk on it.
They're going to cut you open.
Yeah. You get just to clean up the blood. Yeah. I didn't see that. I saw a rope. I saw pistols. And I knew I didn't have a chance in hell of getting out of there in one piece. So he finishes, and he's saying something. He goes, wouldn't you be suspect if somebody comes to your town and starts doing all this shit with you? I said, yeah, if you came to me. I didn't come to you guys. Y'all called me over. Nobody has to do this shit. I'm like, what do we, nobody has to do anything, right? And I think we're done. So I pull my pants back up, and I think we're done. And he grabs a piece of clothing of mine, and he starts kneading it and going through it. Now, this is 2005 to 2007-ish, so technology today is way better than it was then, just like technology is. But let's just say this. Had he done this down my entire piece of clothing, he would have felt something. And he says as a joke when he starts, he goes, "Hey, I'm not going to find anything in here I don't want to, like some naked pictures of my old lady." And he laughs, and his laugh is like, and my laugh is like, you know. And then I'm watching him go down this piece of clothing, and he's doing this, and he's kneading it, and you can hear, again, I don't know how I do it, but on the recording, you can hear me go, an audible sigh, because I'm like watching it, and I'm going, what am I going to do? So here's how it ends. He doesn't find it.
Wow.
Almost. I mean, like, very, very close. And by the way, that first adrenaline dump, I've come back up, and now I've got another adrenaline dump. And now I've come in, I'm like, son of a, it's peaks and valleys. And everybody that I've taught this to or spoke about it to always ask, they're like, man, what would you have said? And I'll tell you, I had two responses. Because I'm a jovial idiot, my first response, if he would have said, what is this? I would have probably said, I don't know, some naked pictures of your old lady to try to buy myself some time, maybe make him quit searching. The only other thing I had, Joe, is, and I remember it like it was yesterday, I would have said, the gig is up. I'm an undercover FBI agent, and I can walk out of here and we can see each other in court, or all hell's going to break loose. Here's the issue, as I get a swig. That would have been a bluff on my part, because as far as I knew, every time I was in that clubhouse, my cover team could never hear me. For whatever reasons. Because somebody's going to say it's tradecraft. But again, this is 2005 to 2008, but they could never really hear me in that clubhouse. And I make it out. I end up going out with Scott Town and Joe Dogs that night. But what happens is I am legitimately pissed off, because now my adrenaline's coming back down, and I'm taking it personal. I shouldn't. I'm undercover as an FBI agent. I'm not really Scott Calloway. I mean, I'm kind of Scott.
But you're so deep in the role.
Well, and it's really me, kind of. I mean, that's the whole thing. I never was far off of who I really am in life.
Right.
A pedophile? Yeah. You hire me to kill somebody? No, I'm not going to ingratiate with you. I'm a stone cold killer. But I'm hanging with you for 2 years or a year and a half or whatever. Yeah, the jokes are kind of the same. Right. So I'm pissed. And at one point, I'm telling Joe Dogs, I'm like, you know what, man? F all you sons. I said, y'all show up tomorrow? I said, I'm stripping all y'all in the damn parking lot. You know, I was just, and they were nice. They let me vent my stuff. Well, that night, when I went to turn in my equipment at an undisclosed location, probably 3, 4, or 5 in the morning, to the case team, what I found out was this. The shift started with Sergeant Higginbottom. Everybody called him Higgy, and Joe, the detective. These guys are awesome, phenomenal law enforcement officers. Although I think their love language is yelling. Maybe that's my southern thing mixing with the northeast thing. But they told me, they said, Scott, we heard you in there. And I'm like, what? When I had that first interaction with Joe Dogs, they are very street smart. They're very good investigators, and they have been working this group forever. Something that happened in that first interaction made their spidey senses, or the Holy Spirit, if you're a believer, say something's not right. They had pulled close enough. They heard everything. They put on their vest. They suited up. And because they'd been in that clubhouse before and knew that door system, their plan was to drive the van into the cinder block wall next to the door.
Oh, my God.
Just to smash that, you know. Sometimes I'm teaching this. I'll joke about it and say it probably would have killed me because I was in the basement, you know. But reverse, back up. You're so damn heavy. But at that moment, I was scared to death, right? So they tell me what happened was they pulled close enough. They heard everything. They're suiting up. They have radioed now because it's kind of the beginning of the shift. They've radioed now back to Boston. Everybody that's working that night is now blue lights and siren all the way down to hauling ass to Taunton, Massachusetts. So I say this in a jovial way, but the case agent was actually a good friend of mine. We went through the FBI Academy together. And that night, again, I'm still shell-shocked. He says, man, when I was coming down the highway with my blue lights and sirens on, I felt like I was in there with you. And I looked at him and I said, you weren't. I said, because I was looking for any friendly face I could find in that damn hole.
In episode number 2405, Joe Rogan breaks down how one real family massacre in Amityville turned into decades of demon movies and ghost stories.
But you don't want to buy a drug dealer's car.
No.
You don't want to live in his house after they repossess it. Like, no.
Would you live in a murder house for a good deal, though?
I almost bought a murder house.
Yeah, I know.
I had put in an offer. It was accepted, and I pulled out at the last minute. It was
You promised to keep it alive and murder your...
It was a 300-year-old house. That was why I ended up not buying it. It was like, and there was a judge who lived in it, put a guy in prison, and when the guy got out of prison, he murdered the judge and his wife in the house. And they didn't tell me when I first toured it, and then I did the research on it, and I thought it was cool. Like, I didn't give a shit at all. I thought it was just like a fun story. Having ghosts.
What year was this?
Why does the one
Like
bathroom
250
have
years ago.
blood coming out of the faucet?
Is that what you
Something like
said?
that.
250 years ago? Oh, okay, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
I'll live in that house.
Yeah, but that's how ghosts. You want those ghosts.
That's an old ghost.
Old timey ghosts
Yeah.
with chains and like a fucking
Yeah. Woo. That's fine. I don't want them new ghosts.
contemporary ghosts,
The
drug
new
dealer ghosts.
The ones that throw you downstairs and kill you, choke you
Slam
with
at
their
your
pussy.
doors.
I
Yeah.
can live in the on the property of murder, but not in the structure.
Bedroom. Oh,
Not
what?
the
Like if
structure.
murder happened on a manor in the English countryside.
No,
And,
just like it happened in a house, and then the house was like demolished. Like you
Okay.
can go,
What
they
if it
did-
happened in the woodshed, like Ed Gein style?
That's weird. Too. Well, in Long Island, they finally did, I think not long ago, like finally demolished the Amityville house.
Oh,
The
really?
Amityville Horror House. Like finally, just like someone bought the property and was like, just take it down.
What is the whole deal with the Amityville Horror? What was the true story about that?
Monsters and ghosts. What do you mean?
But I know
The devil
the
was in an
movie,
Amityville, New York.
But
Oh,
there
what are you
was.
asking?
What was the story?
Sometimes
Like,
a man's
what
got to kill his
supposed-
family.
Did the guy
because of a
actually
ghost.
kill his family?
Well,
there?
the Conjuring, right? That was their story, right? Like they were the ones who discovered the Amityville Horror House, the couple from the Conjuring.
Right, but what was the story about the Amityville Horror? Did the
A father that went nuts killed his family with an axe.
is that what it was?
I think so.
The real story
I believe so.
about the actual house itself. I
Shining.
know that was the movie, but I never knew if that was the actual story itself.
It's got a thing. I mean,
Because there's so many of those movies back in the 80s and shit. Like, they would just make up a history, and you would never be able to Google it.
Well, they
Oh,
say it's a
yeah.
true story. Like Weapons, the beginning of Weapons, they were like, "This is a true story." It's like, is it though?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Was
if
there
I
a
was
witch
lying.
that came and possessed a bunch of children, and they all?
Okay, here it is. He was American mass murderer who was tried and convicted of the 1974 killings of his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters in Amityville, New York. His name is Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. He was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 to life. DeFeo died in March of 2021. The case inspired the book and film versions of the Amityville Horror.
there it is. It's 112 Ocean Avenue.
And so did he kill him with an axe? Shot him. Shot and killed 6 members of his family at their home.
It is
He
funny.
could have just been a piece of shit. The devil didn't have to have anything to do with that.
I know. That is something funny when there's sequels to something that is initially supposed to have actually happened.
Right. Then you just start making shit up.
Yeah, exactly.
That is kind of funny. That's a very good
Gein,
point.
Ed Gein 2, Electric Boogaloo. This is redemption arc.
DeFeo claiming he had no memory of killing his family, so they mounted an affirmative defense of insanity. Insanity plea was supported by the psychiatrist for the defense. Daniel Schwartz, the psychiatrist for the prosecution, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that although DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD, he had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of his crime. Interesting.
Heroin and LSD. Unregulated.
Interesting. Yeah, unregulated. That's it. That's the problem. You got it from the cartel. So that was based on a true story. But, all the demon shit in there, they just add that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of weird that
Possession
you're allowed to
shit.
do that after someone's dead. You can just make up a bunch of stuff.
Sensationalize
of
it.
them. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you-
that's what Ed Gein's show just did.
right. But this is like you're making up a thing where this guy is possessed by demons, which is why he's killing everybody. When
You
he
give
could
him
have
like an
just-
out.
Yeah. Yeah, and
know,
not
it's-
only that, you turn it into a horror movie that has the supernatural in it. Ed Gein, that show was about what he really did. Like, he really did take people's skin off.
The grave robbing and
Yeah.
stuff like that was definitely like the real story.
He did make furniture out of people's skin.
Yeah.
Like, all that stuff was insane.
Yeah, the shows took a lot of like liberties with like rumors and shit, but It
Oh,
was,
like him wearing dresses and jacking off? And stuff
No,
like
like
that?
some of the murders, like he was never connected to all the murders that he did on the show. Like there was sort of like rumors, like none of it, like even the where he killed his brother. I guess
he was mostly a grave robber. Was his thing.
Yeah, he didn't. It was sort of like they kind of put two and two together, and they just said he murdered his brother, but that was never proven.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that part in the movie, and I was like, And I did look it up, and it did say that they weren't sure. They said he died of asphyxiation from the smoke.
Yeah.
But then they noticed that he had
a bruise, but they said he could have. When he fell, he could have hit his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could have. Who knows? But he definitely killed a few people, at least, right?
I think he was only charged with two.
Too, yeah.
Only two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, serial killer.
Come on.
Come on.
The craziest one was Henry Lee Lucas. Do you ever see that movie, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer?
Yeah.
It's based on Henry Lee Lucas. Him and this dude, they traveled across the country together, and he killed, like, they don't even know how many people he killed. But then the problem with that guy is he also seems crazy. So then cops could bring him, what about this one? Illinois, 1972, Betty Lee Harris. I killed her, definitely.
Sure, why
I
not?
remember her. And so then they could chalk stuff off, like that they solved cases. And so they'll get a lot of these guys that are basically just fucking losers, that are, probably strung out on meth, kill a few people, kill people for thrills in a gas station and stuff, like kind of like what the movie implied. But then you give them credit for like 100 deaths.
In episode number 2360, Joe Rogan uncovers unsettling evidence linking environmental toxins to the deadliest killers in American history.
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in the 1970s, around the time when there were a lot of, serial killers beginning to pop up. And there always had been this question, why are there so many serial killers in the Pacific Northwest? And so that was the question I was really thinking about. And the premise, as it emerged from the research that I did and from some of the facts that I learned about what was happening in the Northwest in the run-up to the 1970s, is that there may be a connection between the lead pollution that was prevalent in the area because of smelters and leaded gas, and serial killers. Because lead, of course, as I think most people now know, has a connection to heightened aggression and violence in the people who've been exposed to it. So that was, what emerged to me gradually over the years. I mean, I didn't know a lot about this when I started. I knew about the serial killers, but I didn't really know about the whole lead story. And that came about, I learned about it in part because of some murders. I mean, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is a lovely place. Unfortunately, New Mexico has a high rate of homicides. In part, it's because it's a poor state and doesn't have a big tax base and has, some issues with drug and alcohol addiction. And a few years ago, maybe 2008 or something like that, a couple people were murdered down the street from me. And I live in a very peaceful neighborhood, and that was something that really made me start thinking about the issue of maybe, it might be a good idea to think of moving back to the Pacific Northwest, which I wanted to do anyway because I have family up there. And a few years later, because of that, I was up in the Northwest and looking at real estate ads. And at this point, I didn't really know anything about the smelter or the lead issues. But I was looking at property on Vashon Island, which, if you know anything about the Pacific Northwest, is in Puget Sound. It's right across from West Seattle. Beautiful little, it was quite rural when I was growing up there. Beautiful place. And I came across a real estate ad that said, and this is just for undeveloped property, and it said, arsenic remediation may be necessary. And I thought, wow, what could possibly have caused so much arsenic pollution on Vashon Island that you would have to get it remediated? I mean, that just seemed crazy to me. And I was so curious about that, and I looked it up online and, within minutes discovered that there had been an infamous lead and copper smelter in the city of Tacoma, which is just south of Vashon Island. And so Vashon received a lot of the pollution from that smelter. And so that began a whole process of kind of learning about what happened here, what happened in this region. And I also knew, because I'm sort of really interested in serial killers, as I mentioned, and had been for a long time, reading about them and reading about Ted Bundy and Gary Ridgway. And I knew that both Bundy and Gary Ridgway, who was the Green River killer, had grown up in Tacoma at the same time that this smelter the smelter had been operating there since the 1880s, 1890s, so for a very long time. And I could see that a lot of news media had been devoted to looking at what had happened in this region. There was a whole map, a GIS map, geographic, information systems that allowed you to look up individual houses, residential homes in Tacoma, and see how much arsenic and lead pollution was in the yards. So I discovered that you could actually look up the house where Ted Bundy grew up and see how much lead was in his front yard and his backyard. And the more I read about lead pollution and lead, the association with aggression and violence, the more I wondered, is there a story to be told here about this issue? This is at a time when the term serial killer wasn't even really in use yet. People didn't really understand the phenomenon. It was still kind of an unusual thing, and this was happening. Women were disappearing from dorm rooms or their rooms at University of Washington. They were disappearing off the street, and then they weren't seen again for weeks, for months. In the July of 1974, I was 13, and on a really hot, Sunday afternoon in 1974, 2 women disappeared from a crowded beach at Lake Sammamish, which was about, 10 minutes from my house. And so having had that experience of being around at that time, it was incredibly, it was both really disturbing, but also I just really wanted to understand what was happening.
So did you plan on writing a book about serial killers, or was this understanding of the lead and the arsenic what led you down to write this book?
Yeah, I never really wanted to write a book that was just about serial killers. I mean, I think that's been done,
Right.
And lots of people have done that and done a good job, I mean, Anne Rule, the woman who wrote the first book about Ted Bundy, who knew Ted Bundy.
Oh, she knew him.
Yes, she worked with him at a rape crisis clinic
Oh, my
in
God.
Seattle. Yeah.
He worked at a rape crisis clinic. Wow.
He was very interested in doing research on rape.
Wow.
Because, of course, he was something of an expert. So, yeah, that was why that book was such a phenomenon, because She knew him before anybody had identified, anything in him. She liked him. She was friends with him.
Wow.
She gave him, a ride to the Christmas party.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Was this while he was killing or before he started?
Well,
Is it
the
known?
thing that we don't really know about Ted Bundy is when he started killing. He would never answer that question. And one of the cases that I talk about that really is part of what made me want to write this book is a case of an 8-year-old girl who was abducted in Tacoma in 1961, in August of 1961, Anne Marie Burr. And he was 14 at that time. And he is now one of the principal suspects, I think, behind her abduction.
Oh, wow.
So that may have been his first
14.
murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there like a history of him torturing animals or anything along those lines?
No, but one of the things that I think the FBI was discovering when they started doing all this, investigation of the pasts, the childhood of serial killers, was that this starts really young, that the fantasies and the obsessions with, some of them famously do torture or kill the
Right.
family pets and
Yeah.
so forth. With Ted, that wasn't the case. I think with him, one of the things you see is that he never knew who his father was. He was born illegitimate at a foundling home in Vermont, and his mother left him there for a couple of months before she went back and kind of retrieved him. And that's a common factor with a lot of these guys. They don't know their dad. They don't know who he is, maybe, or they have a very bad relationship with the parents. There's maybe abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. We don't know that about Ted Bundy in terms of the abuse factor, but he remains, I think, really puzzling to people for that reason, because you don't see some of the usual signs with him.
And because he refused to answer questions?
Well, he talked a lot about, various people were able to interview him. The detective in King County in Seattle, who was in charge of the investigation, he was actually quite young when he took this on. I think it was his first major case as a detective. He eventually was able to interview Ted Bundy in prison when he was on death row. Bundy, for a variety of reasons, wouldn't talk about anything that he did except hypothetically in the third person, because he was still trying to work the legal system, and so he didn't want to admit to what he'd done.
How did he talk about it hypothetically in the third person?
I mean, it was sort of like O.J. Simpson or something. He would say, well, if somebody was going to do this, here's what he probably would have done. And so there was a lot of that up until the very last days of Bundy's sojourn on death row. And then he finally began confessing in the last 2 or 3 days, in an attempt, I think, to get the governor interested in perhaps extending his life, because he could give information about where bodies had been left and so forth. But that didn't convince the governor of Florida.
So when you saw this real estate and you found out that it needed to have arsenic removed from it, this began this sort of journey that you went on to try to connect this area with serial killers and toxins. And what did you find? Like, is there a disproportionate number of serial killers that come from that particular area?
Yeah, there really are, as I discovered, a really kind of extraordinary number. And it's hard to talk about these numbers simply because we don't know what a normal number of serial killers
And
in
some
a given
of them don't get
population.
caught? So are there like undiscovered serial killers that are in that area, or maybe deaths that are attributed to unknown people?
There are several cases that have never been resolved. There's something called the dismemberment murders that,
Dismemberment murders?
Yeah, up in the Northwest, where various feet and things were found washing up on shore, and nobody could figure out who they belonged to.
Oh, I remember that. That was fairly recently, right? Am I thinking of the same thing?
It may be another thing that you're thinking of, but I think this dates
There's another
back.
thing. It was like shoes that had a human foot in it.
And they could have just been, bodies of people who
Drowned.
Because that's, I think, what happens in some cases. So I think that's a sort of question mark. There are a couple of others. There's one in Idaho that they've never solved. So there are those cases, but even aside from those, I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at the year 1974 because it seemed really active in terms of what was happening with serial killers around the country and in the Northwest.
JRE number 1614 with Tiller Russell. Why are some women attracted to the world's most dangerous serial killers? A psychological mystery you won't believe.
Do you ever do a demographic breakdown of who watched? Like, does Netflix have a demographic breakdown of who watches those crime shows? Because it's mostly women, isn't it?
Anecdotally, that's what everybody says. There was a
Yeah.
funny bit on Saturday Night Live the other night that was like, what do ladies do when they're home alone? Wait, then they like throw on the murder shows.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. It's a weird thing. And when we were making Night Stalker, we would get to the point in the interview where it's finally, I would ask everybody, like, okay, so for some reason or another, this guy becomes like the Jim Morrison of serial killers, because like when he's paraded through the courtroom, all of a sudden he's got these like groupies and fans, and they're sending him. And I had gotten access to all of the like naked pictures that the girls are sending in, because this author had written a book about him, had all this stuff. And I was like, and you always have to kind of ask that awkward question of like, so why does this guy become this sort of crazy sex symbol object of desire, obscure object of desire? And it's always like kind of particularly with the women who are being interviewed, but everybody. And nobody quite has an answer. Is it the bad boy thing? Is it the celebrity thing? But this is somebody that like, I think as one of the people said, this is somebody that would eat you for dinner, not like, it's craziness to have any attraction to it, but yet it exists. This guy has like groupies and fans.
And it's very common for murderers to get,
Hugely
especially
common.
murderers of women, to get all these propositions from women.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Super strange.
And, I read something about that. No, Whitney Cummings was actually telling me about this. She said she read that it was something that had to do with, there was like an evolutionary benefit to getting close to killers. Like that, I think this is theoretical.
In what regard?
That the idea of it's very hard to kill someone.
Once you have like human personal contact? Is that what you're saying?
No. No, that the act of killing someone, that it's difficult to do, and that it requires like someone who is to be capable of taking another person's life. And to be close to that person means somehow or another you're protected by them, and that they're willing to kill, and that this is like something that existed thousands and thousands of years ago in our DNA, this desire to be close to killers because you were more likely to survive because there were so many killers. Like if you went back in time, a few thousand years ago, murder must have been like really common. Like when people were sword fighting all the time and
Dude, there's a
stabbing each
crazy
other
book on this. Stephen Pinker wrote this book called The Better Angels of Our Nature. And what he does is he tracks over time kind of the nature of violence in humanity.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, once upon a time there's Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel. Like the murder rate is like 50%. So actually we've been trending up ever since then. And like it literally looks at how, over time, the incidence of like violence has actually, even though it doesn't seem like that, dramatically decreased in humanity.
It does seem like that. It does seem like that. I think we just focus on the instances of violence because we have mass media.
Right.
And because
it's fascinating.
Yeah. And if it bleeds, it leads. So there's
But why is that? Like that's something that, making The Night Stalker or even making Silk Road, it's like, why are we fascinated by the underworld? The sort of like the worst things that people do to each other. Like, what is it? And you're participating in it. I'm participating in it. Anytime we're watching it, making it, or whatever, we are all in some way complicit in that.
Episode number 1726. Chuck describes the horrifying final moments of his father's life and the chilling synchronicities surrounding the murder.
But has there been anything in your life that was so horrific that they couldn't imagine telling you?
Except for my father's murder, not really.
Maybe that was it?
Maybe that was it, but boy, that doesn't seem like it's big enough. I don't know.
How was your father murdered?
Dad was murdered in May of 1999. He had answered a personals ad for a woman who was looking for a boyfriend, and the ad was headlined Kismet. I believe that's the Arab word for fate. And Dad met with her. Her name was Rita. She was a lawyer. She had worked in the prison system in the Midwest. And Dad was really, really taken with her. She was really bright and really smart. And she had an ex-husband who had sexually abused her daughter from a different marriage. And they were pressing charges against this ex-husband, and he was going to go to prison. And she had met him while he was in prison, and she was doing legal work. And she had helped him get out of prison. So she helped him get out of prison. She'd married him. He had abused her daughter. She divorced him. She was prosecuting him to send him back to prison. Then she met my father. And this ex-husband had said that if he ever caught her with another man, he would kill them both. So my father was going to pick her up, and she was going to stay at his house in the mountains until the time of the trial. And as he was going to pick her up, he was going down this mountain road on his property, and a giant boulder broke free, and it rolled down the hillside, and it blocked the road. He couldn't get out. So he spent the day with this a lever, forcing this boulder off the road. And then he took a couple extra hours, and he made a sign that said Kismet Rock, so that he could label this boulder as a kind of landmark for when he brought her back to sequester her. And he'd cleaned the house incredibly. The house was just neat as a pin and stocked with all this food. And, he really planned to have this fantastically sort of idyllic time sequestered with his new girlfriend. And he labeled the rock to surprise her. And then he went to pick her up. And when he went to pick her up, the ex-husband showed up. And he shot my father. And my father and the woman took refuge in her house, and the man set fire to the house. And the house eventually collapsed. And the coroner says that they were both dead before the fire got to them. And the coroner says that because of the angle of the shot, my father probably took about 20 minutes to die because the bullet ruptured his diaphragm. So with every breath, he would have been accumulating air between the lung and the diaphragm. And so every breath would have been more and more shallow because his lungs would have been more and more constricted by this air above the diaphragm. But that eventually he'd suffocated. And all of this sounds horrible and tragic. But it forms this fantastic pattern in my father's life because my father, when he was very small, he lived in northern Idaho with this enormous Ukrainian family. And his father went crazy one day. This is all public record. I've talked about this a lot. But his father took a rifle and walked around the house and tried to kill him, my father, and ultimately killed killed his wife, my father's mother, and then killed himself. But my father's earliest memories are of hiding underneath a bed as his father walked around the house in logging boots with a rifle, calling his name, trying to get him to come out so that he could be killed.
Jesus Christ.
And so my father spent his entire life sort of looking for his mother, because as his father was trying to kill him, he was trying to find his mother, who at that point had been killed. And so my father really had this kind of serial pattern with women. He was always looking, in a way, for the woman. And ultimately, he was shot by the man with a gun in the way that he would have been shot when he was 4 years old. And one of the uncanny things is that their bodies were only preserved because a bed on the second floor of this structure, as it was burning, the bed fell over their bodies and insulated their bodies. And my father had escaped his father by hiding underneath a bed when he was a small child. And the fact that the Lonely Hearts ad was headlined Kismet, and the fact that this boulder rolled down in front of my father's car just as he was leaving,
that prevented him from getting there in time, where he probably would have been able to escape before the ex-boyfriend arrived.
Or was, I don't know, there's so many odd, bizarre coincidences and synchronicities. You know, you would have to really dismiss a lot of things in order to make this not something significant.
Not fate, or not some reoccurring theme woven into time.
And in a way that, understanding all these different aspects of it, it provides a comfort that it doesn't seem like this random thing. It seems like something that some aspect of my father's life that was coming full circle and was finally being completed. And maybe I am clutching at straws and I'm just a kind of person looking for significance, which is what we all are. But I'll take comfort where I can find it.
In JRE number 1222, Joe challenges Michael Shermer on the JFK case. Is it messy evidence and bad luck, or the perfect crime hidden in plain sight?
The other aspect with conspiracy theories is cognitive dissonance. That is, we want the size of the event to be matched by a cause that's equally of that size. So the analogy I use is, the Holocaust, the worst genocide in human history, caused by the Nazis, the worst political regime in human history. There's a match there.
Right.
But if you say something like, JFK, the leader of the free world, brought down by who? Lee Harvey Oswald, just some nobody? There's this mismatch. Or 9/11, this huge thing by 19 guys with box cutters.
Do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Sure. Yeah,
what makes you
absolutely.
think that?
All of the evidence, and none of the evidence against anybody else, and all of the evidence against, particularly him. Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed, and then the attorney, what's his name? That was the Manson attorney.
I forget his name.
He has a massive book where he lines up every single one of the arguments by the JFK conspiracy. For example, conspiracists make a big deal about how Oswald got a job at the book depository building, which just happened to be where the parade route was going, so he could have a clear shot. So it was Posner that tracked down when the White House determined, even when Kennedy was going to Dallas, let alone what the parade route would be, and Oswald already had the job there. That's just chance. So
he knew in advance, bro.
That's right. He knew the future.
Do you think it's possible that Oswald was in cahoots?
No.
Why do you think that? What about the magic bullet theory?
Well, that's been settled by the fact that the way it's showed in the videos is that the two seats are like this, and that the bullet has to do this. Well, in fact, the seats were like that, and that Connolly was
Well, you're
down
explaining
here
this in audio form. Just when you're saying
so
it's like stadium seating.
Right.
One's elevated above the other one.
That's right.
Yes.
So the bullet actually does, when it passes through the neck, through Kennedy's neck, and then hits Connolly's shoulder, it is already moving down.
I think it hit his wrist. It fractured his wrist.
Right. This has been tested and tested and tested.
Well, sort of. Here's my issue with it. There's a couple issues. One, on the pro side, the idea that bullets will take a straight path is ridiculous. I've talked to hunters that have shot animals in the front and had a bullet come out the same side they shot it. It ricocheted off bones and came out like the front of the animal.
Wow.
Like bullets take weird paths when they hit things in particular. So do arrows. They take, as a person who's well versed in firearms and shot animals and hunted, sometimes a bullet goes straight through, and sometimes it hits bones and wacky things happen. Things deflect. But on the negative side, they always distort. Bullets always distort, particularly when they hit bone. What bothered me was that they found that bullet in Connolly's gurney when they brought him to the hospital. They just conveniently found this bullet. Aha, we have it. This is the bullet. It matches the same rifle. Yeah.
But it wasn't pristine. It was flattened.
Barely. If you look at that bullet is nothing like a bullet that's hit bone. When bullets hit bone, they mushroom, they balloon, they bend, they distort wildly. They don't come out looking like that. They come out looking like that when you shoot them into water or when you shoot them into like feathers. They don't come out looking like that under normal circumstances when they shatter the bone of two different people.
Well, do you know that for sure?
No, I do not know that for sure. But one thing I do know a lot about is I know quite a bit about what bullets look like when they hit things. I've looked into this pretty extensively, and I've talked to a lot of people in law enforcement, military, hunters, and none of them believe that bullet hit bones, shattered bones, and came out looking like that. Is it possible that bullet was the only bullet ever in the history of the world that did do that? Yeah. It might be.
Okay, so we're getting kind of caught up in the weeds of the anomalies. What about this?
Just the bullet.
Oswald himself had attempted to assassinate a general named Walker 6 months before with his rifle and a handgun, and he went over to the house. He took a shot through the guy's when he saw him at the desk, took a shot, missed him. He told his wife about it. I'm a revolutionary. I'm trying to start something here.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Oswald was innocent. I'm not. I mean, and I think it's very possible that Oswald did shoot at the president. He might have even hit the president. It's also very possibly that some other people were involved as well.
Who?
I don't know.
See, this is the problem.
But wait a minute. Why is it a problem? If you don't know who they are, just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean they didn't exist.
Okay, but why do we need to postulate extra people?
Because of all the gunshots that happened in a short amount of time. The fact that the reason why they came up with the theory of the magic bullet in the first place, because they had to account for a bullet that hit a curb underneath the overpass. Do you know that, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. There's okay. If
do you know why they came up with them? Yeah, I've been there. Do you know why they came up with?
But it's short. I mean, it's right there. You can hardly miss.
That's not the point. The point. Well, it's not. That's sort of true. Yeah, it's not a far shot.
And he was a pretty good marksman. Posner tracked down his.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the reason why they came up with the magic bullet theory in the first place. Do you know why?
Well, I thought it was because of the alignment of the seats.
No, because they had to attribute 3 shots. They had to figure out, one of them, they were thinking, well, all these wounds came from 3 bullets. But then they found a bullet that had hit the curb on the underside. And the guy checked into a hospital because he was hit with a ricochet.
All right.
So there's a curb that they proved was hit with a bullet. There was a bullet hole in the granite or whatever the fuck the curb's made out of. It hit this guy. He went to the hospital. So he was hit with a ricochet. So they knew that one bullet had not hit the president, and so they had to attribute all of these wounds to one bullet now. They had one bullet that landed into his neck, another bullet that hit him in the head.
Right.
And so how did these 3 bullets cause a wound on Connolly as well? Then they came up with there's the bullet. Look at that bullet,
but
bro.
you have to look at the end. It's flattened if you look at it from the end.
No, it's not. Look at this. Under no circumstances do I feel that this bullet could hit a wrist and still not be deformed. We proved that by experiments as a chief consultant in wound ballistics for the U.S. Army, who supervised tests for the Warren Commission. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that there was some grand conspiracy, but I do think it's entirely possible that someone posthumously took that rifle and wanted to pin it on Lee Harvey Oswald definitively. Look, there's people that do things when they know someone's guilty and they plant evidence. Mark Furman did that with O.J. Simpson. They found his glove and they planted evidence. And there was one of the reasons why O.J. got off, because there was some sort of conspiring to make it look like he was, it was the evidence was a clear path. They could have just taken that rifle and, look, could have been that Oswald did it alone. It's possible, but it also could have been that some other people were shooting at him too. It could have been that they had decided to have Oswald be a part of this. And when Jack Ruby ran in and shot him, that doesn't look a little suspicious? That some guy with ties to the mob gets right up to this guy who just shot the president and shoots him? Like, why? He's never shot anybody before. Do it publicly?
Posner talks about Ruby's character and who he was, major Kennedy supporter. Running with some bad dudes, some bad hombres there in Texas, and he was a gun owner. Security wasn't anything like it is now. He really could just walk right in, like he did.
It's possible, but it's also possible that guy owed something to the mob, and this is what they told him to do. You're going to get rid of that guy. No one's going to care. They're going to be happy. Fuck that guy. He just shot the president. Who knows? It seems like people want it to be one way or the other. And they want this case closed.
It doesn't have to be
option.
that way. I mean, Lincoln was assassinated by a conspiracy, and that was evident pretty quickly afterwards.
Right.
And they rounded him up. World War I was launched by a conspiracy with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian group of called the Black Hand, a group of nationalists.
Well, we already talked about the Vietnam War too, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. That's right. A false flag.
So these things do happen. They're all false flags. There are conspiracies to assassinate foreign leaders. Hitch wrote this book on Kissinger as a war criminal. That all the shenanigans we were doing in South America with dictators there, we're backing this dictator because he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch versus this guy, and we're going to assassinate Castro. All the stuff that came out that Johnson tried to cover up, that came out in the Pentagon Papers about Kennedy plotting to have Castro assassinated. That's a kind of conspiracy. So this does happen. The question is, did it happen in that particular case or this one or here? And the evidence, in my opinion, after reading particularly Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed, there's a funny internet meme that went around last week of a guy that dies, goes to heaven, and God says, you've been such a good fellow your whole life. I'll grant you one which you can ask me anything. He said, all right, who killed Kennedy? And God said, it was Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone using his own Carcano rifle. And the guy goes, this goes higher up than I thought.
That's funny, man. Did you ever read David Lifton's novel or book about it, rather?
Yeah.
Best Evidence?
Best Evidence. I didn't read the whole book. When I was researching this back in the 90s, after the Oliver Stone film came out. Because after that, when that came out, I thought, man, if only half of this or 10% of this is true, it's definitely a conspiracy. But then there are websites dedicated to everything he got wrong there.
Well, he made people up. Like the general, Donald Sutherland character, that guy doesn't even exist.
No.
He just used him as a theatrical tool.
Yeah, a very distorting film. But film is such a powerful medium that it's hard to overcome that.
Well, that movie in particular, I mean, you got Kevin Costner, who's the good guy.
Everybody's in that.
Loves I mean, that is a
Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau.
It's a crazy movie.
And
it really has you believing that there's some sort of a conspiracy.
Back into the left.
People, well, here's the thing about that, though. Well, I've looked at that over and over again. Yes, it is back into the left, but the spray kind of comes out at the front.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
it kind of comes out the front. And one thing that does happen when people or things get shot is you have nerves. And nerves react, and things do weird, weird results in your body if you get hit by something. It doesn't. I mean, if you
like
get hit in the chest,
his hands come up like that.
Well, he's grabbing his neck apparently. That was the other thing. There was a difference in the autopsy results from Bethesda, Maryland, versus in Dallas, Texas. Dallas, Texas, They attributed the throat wound to a frontal shot, that something hit him in the front. And then the Bethesda, Maryland, they said that it was a trach wound. They opened him up to clear his breathing pathway. And then the conspiracy theorists would say, why would you clear the breathing pathway of a guy who doesn't have a brain? His brain was shot out of his head.
Right.
There's a lot of shenanigans.
Yeah.
I just don't like when people say they know one way or another.
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. How the fuck could you know? There was a bunch of there was also bullet fragments in Connolly's wrist that weren't missing from the bullet itself. The bullet itself, whether you think it's pristine or not, it's not missing a lot of fragments. And there's fragments in Connolly's body that you could detect on an X-ray. There's X-rays of his wrist, and you could see the little pieces of bullet.
I don't know what the explanation for that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my
but
point.
the fact that I don't know, I'm not the world's expert on this stuff.
People want to clean it up. That's what I don't like. They want to clean it up or they want to muddy it up. Instead of like looking at it 100% objectively, they want one thing or another. I think it's entirely possible that Lee Harvey Oswald, it's either, to me, they want to say, these are the two narratives. Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy, he had nothing to do with it, the government set him up, or he acted alone. But why couldn't he have been involved in it? You know, he obviously was involved in some shady characters. The guy spent a ton of time in Russia, came back over here very easily, even though the Cold War was going on. There's a lot of weird stuff. He might have very well been some sort of a government informant or working in cahoots with the government. If that's the case, and he did shoot Kennedy or shoot at Kennedy, who's to say that he wasn't with other people and they killed him because this guy was going to go to jail and he was going to start talking? When they arrested him, he said, I'm a patsy. I'm just a patsy. And then, blam, he's dead. Oh, we got him. And that's it. Wrap it up tight. It wasn't until the Zapruder film that people really started to question. And I think that was, it might have been 10 years later, right? We've talked about this. You know, the whole history of the Zapruder film, how it was released?
Yeah.
The Geraldo Rivera show.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Right.
Dick Gregory, a comedian, brought the film footage to the Geraldo Rivera show and showed it on television for the first
Life
time.
Life magazine bought the rights to that.
Life magazine had the rights and didn't do anything with it. They kept it for more than a decade. And Dick Gregory got a hold of the actual film footage and premiered it on the Geraldo Rivera show.
Wow.
I want to say it was like 1971 or 72 or something like that. So it was way, way after the assassination that the American, what was it?
75 is 12 years.
Oh, that's crazy. 75.
Right.
So all those years later, and then people got a chance to see the footage and they were like, wow, this is not how it was described to us at all. And it made people skeptical.
There's a good Nova show on ballistics in the head and testing the rifle and could you shoot that many times in that many seconds and so on. And it's to me, it's pretty convincing.
The problem with me is I know too much about what happens when bullets hit bones. I don't buy that was the bullet. I do. Look, I think they could have just dropped that bullet off. Doesn't mean that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it. The thing about that bullet, though, is there might be some fuckery involved. And the David Lifton book was the book that got me into conspiracies. That fucking book, goddammit. If I could go back and not read it, I bombed on stage because of that book.
You did?
Yeah, well, it's my fault, but I've read that book the day I was performing, and I was freaking out because I was like 24 or something like that. I was like, oh, this is crazy. They killed the president. You know, I was so naive. And I was like really bummed out when I went on stage. And then I realized like, oh, you can't, like, I didn't know any better. I'd only been doing comedy for 3 years. I'm like, oh, you can't go on stage bummed out. Like, you got to get your head together. You can't just say the jokes and not have some emotional attachment to them. But that book highlights, what it was Lifton was a bookkeeper. Or an accountant, I believe. And he was hired to do something with the Warren Commission report. And because he found some contradictions, and he went over the entire Warren Commission report, which is an enormous publication. And he found all of these problems in the Warren Commission report and all these contradictions. And it was his determination after reading everything and writing his book. He thought that the conclusion they made before the fact, and that they wrote all this stuff to sort of to back up their conclusion, that it wasn't based entirely on an objective version of the facts and of the event itself. And his take was there was a conspiracy.
Well, it's launched a mini industry of books and films. It
has, man. Think about all the money that's been made off of the Kennedy assassination.
You could go down the rabbit hole with this stuff
Did you ever
endlessly.
see the Jesse Ventura version of it? He believes Everything's
every
conspiracy.
conspiracy.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best.
I
at
was
that.
on his conspiracy show.
Were you?
Yeah, he's out there.
Oh yeah, he believed it. Yeah, he was like, no one could have made that shot. They definitely could have made that shot. It's a rifle. It's not that far.
No.
And just because someone gets lucky doesn't mean they can't get lucky. Like, people get lucky all the time. People flip a coin and it lands on heads a mile away. I mean, you could throw a coin. You could throw a coin out of a helicopter. And you could say, this is going to be heads when it lands, and it can be heads. You can get lucky.
Right.
It really is possible.
Well, this assassination of Franz Ferdinand that triggered the First World War.
Yes.
But okay, they messed up. I mean, they had like 7 of them, and they met in secret, and they got their weapons that morning, and so on. And a couple of them chickened out. Somebody else got lost. There's like 3 of them there. Somebody threw a hand grenade, missed, rolled into the car behind Franz Ferdinand, and they got hurt and went to the hospital. And he's like, "Oh, fuck this! I'm not giving my speech. Let's go to the hospital and visit, see how he's doing." So they double back, like half an hour later, they double back and come back down the same route. And the guy who had missed, he was just sitting there on the curb. And it's like, oh, fuck, here they are. Bam.
Yeah.
Pure luck.
Pure luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that history turns more on that kind of thing than on carefully orchestrated, perfectly executed plots.
Sure. It certainly can. But, the idea that I've always found it offensive, the idea that there's no way Oswald could have hit him. Like, that people say that. Like, there's no way. There's no way. Like, you're out of you never shot anything.
Right.
That's crazy. I can make that shot. 100%.
Yeah.
Look, if you have a rifle with a scope and a guy is 100 yards away, you tell him you can't shoot him?
Right.
That's crazy talk.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy talk. Or the rifle was that was the other thing they said. The scope wasn't lined up correctly. Here's the thing, folks. If you have a rifle, okay, and this has happened to me before, and you drop the rifle, the scope gets damaged. It gets moved. It's a very sensitive thing. Like, when you're talking about something that goes faster than the speed of sound, a bullet, boom, firing out of a rifle. You have that is going incredibly fast, and to be able to get that reticle exactly on where you think that bullet's going to hit requires a lot of adjustments. When you go to the range, they set up a lead sled. You put your rifle down on this sled, so you're not holding the rifle. And by the way, Oswald wasn't holding it either. The idea was that he had it rested,
right,
which makes it much more steady and much more easier to make an accurate shot. So you set up this rifle on the lead sled, and it's usually 100 yards or 200 yards, whatever, however far the distance is to the target. You squeeze, 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 boom, the trigger goes off, and you see that the bullet is low and to the left by a couple inches. You make an adjustment on the scope. If you drop that rifle, that scope gets knocked, the adjustment's out the window.
Right.
So the idea that there's like a perfect chain of command between Lee Harvey Oswald pulling that trigger and that scope never got rattled at all. No, but the conspiracy theorists want you to think there's no way he could have made that shot. That scope wasn't even lined up good. How the fuck do you know?
Yeah, right.
How do you know? You don't
Right.
know. Like, anybody who knows anything about rifles knows there's no way you could know. Because if all you'd have to do is whack it. Here, I'm going to bring you the rifle and just bump it with your elbow funny, knock it into a wall when you're handing it to someone, and that scope's going to be off.
Right.
So then you take it to a range. We're going to prove definitively that he could have never made this shot because this scope is off.
Right.
Boom. Look, it's 6 inches to the left.
Right.
Wow, case closed.
Right.
No, it's there's no way people know whether or not that scope was on when he was pulling that trigger. There's no way you know.
When I went to Dealey Plaza, it's so big in our public imagination.
It's not.
It's not. You go there, it's like, this is it? It's tiny.
It's so small.
And then you go up to the museum, and you're on the 6th floor the book depository, and you look down, and they have an X, the 2 X's in the street. And you think, that's just right there.
Dude, I could shoot that with an arrow.
I bet you could.
I can.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you give me some time, if you put a target right where that thing was, right where that Lincoln was, and you put me in that window, I guarantee I hit that target with a bow.
Right.
Like, the idea that you couldn't, and I'm holding it, no rest.
Right.
The idea that you couldn't do that with a rifle,
right?
You certainly could. Lee Harvey Oswald certainly could have done it. He certainly could have shot at Kennedy. He was a crazy fuck. Lee Harvey Oswald was involved in a lot of shady shit. It wasn't like he was just some dentist somewhere. It was
and
like
he scored the second, according to Posner, he scored the second highest marksmanship.
There it is, right
Right here to here, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that's so small. That is such a short distance.
Then the other question I had, when you're coming up Houston Street and going left, I always wondered why he didn't shoot him there when the car's coming right at him.
What was in the
there.
other window? He was in the window on the left-hand side. He was over there.
No. It's
It's over here.
Yeah, it's right there.
That's where he shot him from that window
yeah,
there?
Yeah. So I always wondered why he didn't shoot him when the car was coming right at him, because that would have been a cleaner shot, it seems to me.
Head on, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe want to shoot him in the back of the head.
Does it have like a sniper?
Maybe panic.
It's that upper right, yeah. It's the
look
upper
at that.
right one, yeah.
3D.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, when we drove through it, when not last time I was in Dallas, a couple times ago, but when we drove through it, it's eerie. You're like, wow,
Yeah.
it all happened right here.
I've been twice there, and there's always conspiracy people walking around. They're looking for a tip, so I gave this guy $10 to go, all right, give me the whole story. And he was very entertaining. Okay, here's the grassy knoll, the pickety fence.
Yeah.
And he had another one about this man. He took the manhole cover off. He goes, there was somebody down here in the manhole.
Oh.
Popped up, bam, shot him, went back down the manhole.
My favorite dumb conspiracy is they believe that the driver turned around and shot Kennedy.
Right.
That's the best one.
Right, yeah.
Those are the space's fake people. But you're always going to get a bunch of really wacky conspiracies whenever anything happens in the news.
In JRE number 1459, Tom O'Neill explains why the official story of the Manson-Tate murders doesn't add up and hints at something far darker behind it.
So these groups were trying to incite violence. Now we get to the motive of the official narrative of the Manson murder, or the Tate LaBianca murders, which is what the prosecutor Vince Bugliosi presented at trial, which was the famous helter-skelter motive. In a nutshell, Manson believed that there was going to be a race war, and he wanted to incite this race war because he had convinced his followers that through messages he received from the Beatles' White Album, from their lyrics, from biblical Old Testament prophecies, that he had been told that he was going to be the savior of the world. And once a race war started, he would hide his family in a bottomless pit in the desert. And when the race war ended, with the blacks winning, the blacks would be framed for murders. The Manson family would emerge and repopulate the planet with their perfect offspring and dominate the blacks.
This was Vince Bugliosi's narrative, or
there was talk of that. There was a philosophy of helter-skelter at the Spahn Ranch, where they lived in '68 and '69, that Manson would discuss. But whether or not it was the motive for the murders is I raise serious questions about that in the book.
Manson would discuss it in that way, that there was going to be a race war and that they would emerge and then their offspring.
Yeah, except for the fact that what's questioned. So the way Bugliosi was able to convict Manson wasn't at the Tate house when the murders happened. He had, in the official story, dispatched Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Kasabian, and Tex Watson to the house, the former house of Terry Melcher. They didn't know who lived there, but just to kill everybody. And as Manson allegedly said, leave something witchy. He wanted it to look like blacks had killed these, all he knew was they were wealthy, beautiful whites. And he wanted to ignite the race war, because if the Panthers got blamed for these murders, then the police would crack down on them, they'd revolt, the revolution would happen, it would spread across the whole world, and then when it was over and the blacks had prevailed, they were too dumb, Manson believed, to be able to run the world. That's when he would come out with his followers of their hole in the desert and take over the planet. Now, Bugliosi said in interviews that I didn't have until after he and I stopped speaking, which was when he started threatening me with lawsuits and other things in the about 2006-07. I discovered 2 or 3 interviews he gave in the early 70s where he was asked if he believed that Manson really believed this craziness. And Bugliosi said, I don't think Charlie believed in it. He got his followers to, but he never believed in that. He was too smart. He was a con man. What the interviewers didn't ask him in the follow-up was, well, if he didn't believe it, why did he send his followers to kill these people the first night at the Tate house, the second night in Los Vilas, as, upper middle class couple, the LaBiancas? Then, what was the motive? And that's one of my biggest regrets, is that I slipped, and they were kind of obscure. One was a Penthouse interview. The other was a regional newspaper. But that I didn't have them. I thought I had done all the research. I thought I read every interview he'd ever given, but I didn't have it at hand to say, all right, Vince, I get that, because I don't think Manson believed it either. Then what was the motive for the murders? Why were they sent there to kill? And that's what the book explores.
So do you think Bugliosi was operating with the knowledge that Manson was a part of these programs?
Oh, that's the big question,
Yeah.
Again, I lay it out in the book. So I interviewed Bugliosi. He was the first, not the first, but one of the first interviews I did when it was a magazine assignment. He invited me to his house in Pasadena. So it was April of 99. We spent literally 6 hours together. He was so kind and generous with his time. I thought I scored. I had the prosecutor. He hadn't given interviews. He always gave interviews about this, but he hadn't for a number of years. He agreed to do it for whatever reason. And during the course of that interview, I arrived at his house, went into his kitchen. His wife gave me Italian cookies, with coffee and lemonade. Then he and I went out to lunch in the valley somewhere. He showed me some of the sites connected to the murders. Then we went back to the house and talked till sunset. And towards the end of the 6 hours, I did realize that even though he was talking nonstop and I'm recording everything, he hadn't given me anything new or different. I mean, I had just finished Helter Skelter. I read it for the first time because I'd never been interested in the case till I got the assignment. So I did what we call the Hail Mary pass in journalism, which is you ask someone if there's anything they could tell you off the record, not for attribution, that will help them to get something fresh. Because I was still searching for an angle. This is the first month of reporting. And Vince kind of thought a minute, and he goes, turn it off, turn it off. So I turned off the recorder. And he did, I could tell he was debating, but then he told me something, which I'm not sure if, I don't think I revealed it till the last chapter. It was off the record, it was salacious, pretty shocking. In the larger picture, it doesn't change anything really, but it showed me that he had a very different account of something very important in the narrative. And I took that away and I thought, wow, I'm going to...
What did he say?
Well, first let me explain. It was off the record.
Right.
In 2005, when I interviewed him for the second time, and all things went to hell, and he started threatening me and with lawsuits and writing letters to my publisher trying to get them to stop the book, he wrote about what he told me, and he claimed that I had dragged it out of him and embellished it and all this. But once he put that in a letter, the lawyers at the publisher said, well, it's not on the record anymore because these documents will all be in a civil trial when he sues you, which he said he was about to do.
Not off the record, you mean?
Yeah, they said now it's on the record.
Right,
I mean, he's violated his agreement with you. So what he told me was that famously an audio or videotape was taken from the Tate house by the police, the first day after the murders. They found it hidden up in a loft. Home videotaping was relatively new at that point. Not a lot of people had cameras, but Roman Polanski did. And in Helter Skelter, Vince says in the book that the police took the tape, viewed it, and it was just Sharon and Roman making love, and returned it to the loft. Roman was in London at the time of the murders. He came back immediately, and then about a week later, he went up to the house. And one of the first things he did was he went up to the loft, and he never even knew that they took it, allegedly. That's a story. Found it and took it. Vince told me originally off the record that the tape wasn't of Roman and Sharon making love. It was Sharon being forced to have sex with two men against her wishes, and he said Roman was the one who was making it because you could hear him in the background. If you read you've read those chapters. Roman did a lot of bad stuff to Sharon.
Yeah, he seemed like a terrible person.
He was pretty bad. Yeah.
Well, when you hear what he did, the reason why he can never come back to the country, you go, well, okay,
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's not that surprising.
He's a monster.
Yeah. I mean,
a monster that's really good at making movies.
Yeah. Which we're not going to see anymore because the last one he made, which is supposed to be one of his best, they're not going to release it in the United States. But once I had that, that's kind of the first rabbit hole I went down, because I'm like, well, if this was different in the official narrative, what else might they have changed? So Vince and I were talking on the phone about every week for 2 months. He was so accessible. So I'd be interviewing people. And one of the first things after that I found was The Perjuries by Terry Melcher on the stand. I got access to 2 separate files and found that Melcher, Doris Day's son, record producer, young boy wonder, who lived in the house with his girlfriend Candy Bergen on Cielo up until January 1st of 69, then moved to Malibu, and Roman and Sharon moved into the house in February. Melcher was the part of the motive for why the house was picked. And again, this is getting into the weeds, but it's hard to talk about any of this without this exposition. Mm-hmm. Manson sent his followers up there to instill fear in Melcher by killing all the occupants of his former house who were strangers to them. I don't believe that. That's the official narrative. But Melcher testified at the grand jury and then at the trial that he had 3 fleeting encounters with Manson, one at Beach Boy drummer Dennis Wilson's, 2 there, I think, and then, 1 there, and then 2 when he went to the Spahn Ranch in April and May of 69 to listen to them play music with the possibility of recording them. And he didn't think they were talented enough and told Charlie that in so many words. And then, again, this is the official narrative. That's when Manson kind of spiraled and went crazy because he'd been rejected by Terry Melcher. So he decided it was time for Helter Skelter, the race war. And again, a lot of these things don't add up when you step back. Well, why didn't he kill Terry Melcher at the house in Malibu? Because he knew where he had moved to. Why did he just go to this other place and kill strangers? Maybe Terry wouldn't connect it, all that. The bottom line was Terry on the stand, and in all the official accounts of this case, of which there are many, not just Helter Skelter, but lots of books, his relationship with Manson ended in May of 69. He said he never saw him again. When the murders happened at his former house, it never occurred to him it had anything to do with him or that Manson did it. I stopped believing that a month or 2 in, and then I found these documents showing that Melcher actually had gone to see Manson twice at the Spahn Ranch after the murders, and then once all the way out at Death Valley where they had the Barker Ranch, where they were hiding when they were finally captured in the fall of 69. Once I could document that changed the whole, it didn't change, but impacted the motive. Melcher was a principal witness, again, because Charlie wasn't at the Tate house. Bugliosi had to convict him of conspiracy, in other words, ordering people to go up there and kill. And he had to have a reason for that house, so Terry provided it by saying, yes, I did go out there and try to record them. And then eventually in the question it came out, but I never had anything to do with them again. I had no idea. I never saw him or heard from him again.
The motivation was revenge on Terry Melcher because Terry Melcher didn't turn him into a star.
Right.
So this is what Bugliosi was using, but it didn't make any sense because Melcher saw him after the murder several times.
Yeah, and not only, even if it did make sense, you're right, and that's why I think you could get away with anything then, because the antics of the family at the trial, and everybody was so horrified by what was going on, nobody was looking at this critically and questioning stuff, because every day, Manson and the girls were getting thrown out of the courtroom for screaming, for singing, for dancing, for mocking the proceedings. So all this stayed under the radar, but once I could prove that Melcher lied, and then 2 or 3 more, then I knew that I had to question the entire narrative. So Bugliosi started monitoring my interviewing. This is all laid out in the beginning of the book. So by the fall of the first year of 99, I got a call from one of my sources, Rudy Altobelli, who was another important witness. He was the man who owned the house where the murders happened. He was traveling. He was traveling actually in Europe with Sharon, who had come back Sharon taped about 3 weeks before to have her baby. And Rudy had told me from the very beginning, he was very close to Terry, Dennis Wilson, and the third guy, Greg Jacobson. Greg Jacobson was another important witness who lied throughout all of his testimony in the trial to fit a narrative that Vince needed. Rudy had told me that Vince called him Terry called him and said, "What are you telling Miss O'Neill? No one was supposed to know about that. Vince promised me it would never come out." So at that point, I knew that I was onto something even bigger. And then I got a call from Vince, and he left a message on my machine saying he wanted to talk to me. It was important. So I called him back, and he said, I'm hearing, I can't remember who told me, and that was another little game of his. He would never be, it's like Trump saying, this guy said to me, or one of my friends, or they say, Vince said, someone told me, I heard that you're questioning my tactics and my choices at the trial. Is that true? Tom, what's going on here? I go, well, I'm looking at stuff, Vince, and you knew where this was going. I mean, I know we haven't talked, at that point we hadn't talked for about 6 weeks, I think. He goes, well, I want you to assure me that I'll be given the opportunity to answer any of these questions. He goes, because what might appear irregular to you as a layperson can be easily explained by me. And I said, well, of course, Vince, I'll definitely swing back around to you before. He goes, and I thought this was going to be out in August, and we were in like October, I think. I go, yeah, I got an extension. He goes, well, they're also saying it's a book and that you lied, that it's not a magazine star. I go, oh, no, I'm still getting paid by Premiere, because I was at that point. And I had no idea it was going to be a book because we were still in the first 6-7 months. So at that point, we stopped talking, Vince and I, and it wasn't until 2005 when I got my book deal that I went back to him with these questions. And I hoped naively that I would get him to break down and say, yes, this was all a CIA operation. I was operating.
Oh, God.
But no, that was stupid of me. But, I thought, what else can he say when I put all this in front of him? But, as...
He must have been really freaked out by how deep you got into this.
Yeah. Well, again, you've read the prologue to the book where we open in that scene in his kitchen where he's screaming and cursing at me and saying he's going to hurt me like I've never been hurt before, and he's going to sue me for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's crazy. Well, when you get to the end of the book, you'll see the outcome of that day and what happened when he's begging me. He's saying he'll give me a quote on the cover of my book if I don't publish this stuff. And then when I wouldn't agree to anything, then the lawsuit threats started happening. So I naively, I didn't think he was going to break down and say I was working for someone else. I had no choice.
Right.
But instead, he was evasive, threatening, screaming, denying. He had 2 recorders. I had 2 recorders. He went off the record every 2 minutes. So we'd have to turn off all the recorders, and Vince was not turning his. I'm like, Vince, you didn't turn yours back. Oh, no, you didn't turn it off. Wait, and no, that's my record. No, this is yours. So 1 minute he's screaming and cursing at me going, do you have any idea how I will fuck you if you fucking put this in your book? And then the recorders go back on, but sometimes they were already on because we couldn't keep up with all the off the records.
Jesus.
Then when I got home that night, so I walk out of the house, 6 hours, exactly almost 6 hours, just like the first time 6 years earlier. He's grabbing me by the arm. He goes, this isn't quid pro quo, this isn't quid pro quo, but if you don't put this ridiculous nonsense in, he goes, a blurb from Vince Bugliosi, he always referred to himself in the third person, a blurb from Vince Bugliosi on the cover of this book, you have no idea what that does, and I rarely do it. I'm very selective. I get asked 10, 20 times a day. I mean, the man's ego is, you'll see that in the book. Then I get home that night, there's messages, call me. And he called me, I think it's a week and a half, almost every day. The next morning, a few days later, he would bully me, and then he'd say, no, look at what this is going to do to my family, my kids, and all that. Went on and on and on.
So you had to be very excited by that, knowing that, like, this is...
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason for that guy to react like that unless you had him.
I know. And then...
He knew.
Yeah. So a year later, not a year later, he said, when we finally, he goes, at the very last phone call, which was a week and a half later, he goes, so you're really going to go ahead and do with this? Go ahead with this. I go, Vince, I'm going to report what I have. I go, if you want. At this point, I had lost, the magazine deal had ended. I had sold the book. So he knew I had a publisher. I told him who it was, and he asked for my editor's name there. He said, because I will be sending them a letter. He goes, I will work on this letter for hours. It's going to be a complete rebuttal of everything you argued, all of your arguments, all of your points. It's going to ruin you. They're going to cancel your deal because they're not stupid. So he wrote the letter. They got it in, I think it was June or July, after February of that year, 2005. And I got a call from my editor. He said, "You got to talk to our attorneys." He goes, "We have a letter from Vince." I go, "Well, I told you it was coming." He goes, "It's insane. It's 34 pages, single space with 50 pages of attachments." And he goes, "I've never seen anything like this." So he said, talk to the attorney. So they sent me over to the attorney. And he said, "My first question," I'd never met the guy before. He goes, "My first question for you, O'Neill, is he suffering from dementia?" He goes, "I was a law student during the trial." And he goes, "I follow that trial every day in the paper. I've read Helter Skelter. He was brilliant." He goes, "I can't believe the person that wrote this letter wrote that book. So maybe you were dealing with somebody who was impaired." I said, "He's mentally ill." And I have a lot of proof of that in the book. It's not dementia. I go, he's finishing his magnum opus, a 20-year effort to write a book rebutting the critics of the Warren Commission about the Kennedy assassination. I go, he's got a book coming out, a tour, and sure enough, he wrote, I think, 2 or 3 more books after that. I go, I caught him. He goes, all of his arguments don't make sense. He's contradicting himself. The letter goes off in a directions that it sounds like it's written by a madman. And I go, "Is it going to inhibit us?" He goes, "Oh no, we're opening the champagne here." He wouldn't write a letter like this unless you got him.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes sense. 50 pages of attachments.
That was the first letter. Then about 6 months later, another letter. I think there were 4 total. I quote some of them in the book. It was nuts. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2015 or 16. And I get a lot of criticism you get it from all.
How old was he when he died?
I think 74 or 5. It was cancer. I knew he was sick off and on for a couple of years. But I've been accused by my critics of not publishing the book until he died because of these threats of law. No, I wanted him to be alive. I wanted him to be accountable and have to answer to all this. The reason I didn't publish it when I was going to publish it was Penguin, my publisher, canceled my deal in 2011.
The motive, though, to get back to the
motive.
motive.
The motive, yeah.
For the
so the official motive was double. Bugliosi said in his closing arguments that the main motive was to ignite helter-skelter race war. The sub-motive was to instill fear in Terry Melcher because he had rejected Manson.
Right.
So you're saying, well, then if it wasn't those, then what was it?
Right.
All right. If you look at the COINTELPRO objectives, which was to diminish to neutralize the left-wing movement, to make them look horrible, evil, bad, and this is what drugs are going to do to your kids. The kind of outcome that these murders had was to make the hippies the boogeyman. The biggest boogeyman in United States history, I don't know forever, but at least until the 70s, became Charlie Manson. And when Manson and his family were identified as suspects the first week of December '69, it was like earth-shaking because all of a sudden nobody knew who had committed the murders, that the case was open from August till 1st of December. You have photos on the front page of every paper in the world of these hippie women, nursing children, living communally, who are accused of these horrible, brutal slayings. And the argument was, and what the reporters were reporting was, they had gone crazy on LSD and free love and the hippie ethic. And that was the same thing Chaos and COINTELPRO were trying to do. They were trying to damage the youth revolution, the youth movement.
Why do you think they targeted that house, though?
So J. Edgar Hoover, when he had the COINTELPRO operation, he wrote an LA agent wrote a memo to Hoover saying what we have to do. This is when they were mostly battling the Panther, trying to neutralize the Panthers in LA, was go after the whites, the elite whites, the Hollywood whites who were supporting the Panthers. There was something called the White Panther Party that began in LA, 67 or 68. Jane Fonda, Warren Beatty, Cass Elliot. Those 3 were actually under surveillance by the FBI. They were part of this group, Donald Sutherland, and they were basically Leonard Bernstein. They supported the Panthers. They raised money. So in this one memo, which I think it was the winter of '68, I got the date in the book, said that what we have to make the whites think is that when the revolution finally happens, when the blacks rise up, they'll be lined up with everybody else and slaughtered. So if you look at that memo, that was part of their operation, which was they did it by sending letters, making, the whites scared. So that, I hate to speculate, but I think people will draw that conclusion if you read the book, that this could have been a chaos or COINTELPRO operation to turn, the world, the nation, the culture against hippies, the left wing, the Black Panthers.
And they picked that house because it was high profile, because Sharon Tate was in it?
It actually, well, not because Sharon Tate was there. Well, her and Polanski, and that's one thing that Tarantino, I don't think he showed the parties at the house. They were like the social center of Hollywood. It wasn't just the movie people, it was the music people. And Terry Melcher and Candy Bergen lived there for 2 years before. That was a party house. Everybody went in and out of there. It kind of represented the elite of movies, music, Hollywood, white people. So that would have been a very high profile
place to hit.
Target, yeah.
Because all the people in that community, in the Hollywood community, would then also be aware that that was a spot that they had been to.
Yeah.
All these high profile people had been there.
Yeah. It's like Joan Didion wrote in her book, The White Album, that the morning she learned about the murders, and she knew most of the victims, she goes, I knew that the 60s had ended, they were over. I mean, there was also Altamont and, not a whole lot else, but that was like a cultural watershed moment.